fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren. Mr. Dave Martino is here practicing his karate, his pirouette.
Pirouettes.
You should have had some
like
music.
Baryshnikov. I did add music.
Oh, see, I never
There's
have
music.
the sound on.
Yeah.
Oh boy, was it like really sweet, nice?
No.
Classical music? No, what heavy metal?
I've been using the new Sebastian Bach album, and for
yeah.
this one, what did I do?
Yeah, I don't
know. Megadeth, Tornado
see.
of Souls, because I'm spinning around.
Yeah, you're a big tornado.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're what caused all the bad weather, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You do that out in the street, and it ends the end of the world coming.
End of the world.
Well, let's see. What have we got going today? Today we've got an author, and we're going to talk about her book, Past Life's Revenge. And it's a David Harris and Emma Jackson mystery. Came out July 9th here. So, Angela Van Breemen, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to talk with both of you.
Well, Angela, so what got you into writing and doing an actual book? I understand you do poetry and stuff, but why did you decide to do a whole book?
Well, actually, I never really thought that I was the kind of person who would sit down and write a book, because I have always felt that I can convey what I'm feeling, what I'm observing in the natural world and in, parts of society with a few succinct words in poetry. And so it never occurred to me to really write a book. I made a half-hearted attempt at this book, actually, when I was in my mid-20s. And a third of the way along, I just abandoned it. Life got busy, and so I just really stuck to my poetry. But I never got rid of the manuscript. I kept it in a drawer for years. And every so often I would take it out of the drawer and I would look at it and I think, nah, and I would just put it back into the drawer. But I decided in December of 2022, while I was clearing out my desk, I saw it there again. Yellowed pages, curled at the edges, and I thought, why don't you at least look at it? So I started to read it and I thought, wait a minute. Why did I abandon this? This is interesting. So all of a sudden a switch went on and I started writing. And I suppose part of the advantage was I had a lot of the plot, at least a third of the plot already outlined and written. I had to rewrite a lot because the language has changed a lot in the 35 to 40 years since I looked at the book. And I just started writing, and I was almost obsessed with how I wrote. I just kept on writing. And then I got to the part where there was nothing to fall back on because I'd rewritten everything. And I thought, well, what do I do now? And I felt lost for like a minute or two, and then I sat back and I said, I'm going to meditate on this. And before I knew it, I had the next third of the book, wrote that furiously, and then I finished the third part. And I was done actually from December to about the end of May. I was actually done. And then I asked a few beta reader friends of mine who are also authors to read it over, and I got some lovely input from them. But I loved it so much, I didn't know writing books could be this much fun. Because what I realized is I love reading. I read 2 or 3 books a week. I just love to read. But what I enjoyed about the writing aspect is I felt suddenly that I wasn't just on the sidelines. I actually had an input and control in what would happen with my characters and what they would be like and how the plot would unfold. And that was so much fun. It was a real delight. I still write a lot of poetry. I'll never give that up because I find those are short bursts of a way for me to show how I'm feeling about a particular situation. But I've already started the second book. I'm planning a series with David Harris and Emma Jackson, and about a third of the way through this second book. I'm just loving it. So I've converted myself from poet to both.
And you said you it couldn't be. You said 35 years, 40 years.
Yeah.
You said you started writing in your mid-20s. You're still
Yeah.
in your 20s. You're still in your 20s.
You're
So how could it
so
be 35,
kind.
40 years?
What a kind. Oh my goodness, you are so kind. So yeah, I started writing it when I was 24. And then I met my husband, and life got busy with, paying mortgages and working, and I just put it to the side and really never considered myself seriously as someone that would be writing a book. But I guess a little bit of maturity came along the way, and a way to discern what was good and what I had written before and what I needed to turf. So it was a really great experience, and I'm hooked now.
So let's talk about the basic plot. So what's the storyline here for this book?
Yeah, it's a fun one. It's a little spooky and a little mysterious. So basically, I have the protagonist. His name is David Harris, and he has had horrible nightmares his entire life. And really, even though he has sought the help of professionals, he's not been able to get any kind of comfort or relief from these dreams, which are very vivid. And by chance, although I think it's by fate, he meets a young woman who is a psychic, and her name is Emma Jackson. And she begins to share some of his visions and feels very concerned about this, and suggests that perhaps what he's experiencing is not some trauma that happened in childhood that the doctors are insisting must have happened for him to be so troubled. She suggests a past life regression. So David undergoes a past life regression and learns that he was murdered in his most recent life. And he also learns that he reincarnated so soon that his killer of his former self is still alive. So from there, Emma and David team up to find justice for the previous life and to stop this killer from killing again.
Interesting story. How do you get into the head space of these characters, and especially, let's say, the male characters, like when you've got David Harris? How do you portray him, and how are you able to write dialogue for him?
Well, I think one of the advantages is growing up, I was more of a tomboy. And so I always had fun associating with guys. And so what I found was that even though David is not based on a particular person, because I spent enough time with guys, that what happened was I just kind of got a voice of what David Harris might be like. And also, he has a sensitive side to him. He has a troubled side, but he also has a strong side. And so I think just observing men and also spending time with them and enjoying their company. I was never really a girly girl, so for me, I enjoyed more of the stimulation that you would get from climbing trees and having fun that way than there would be. I never played with dolls or things like that. It just didn't interest me. So for me, I think I had that interesting influence from really trying to understand both genders, really, but trying to understand the male perspective, because I think that as a writer, we have to try our best to impart that feeling so that your characters don't all sound the same.
Well, I never played with dolls, but I had an easy bake oven.
Oh, did you? Oh
Yeah.
gosh, I was terrible. Like I just could never be interested in those things. And I grew up in the country, so that made it even easier. So my days were always spent outside enjoying any time of the year, really, the weather. So
I was baking cakes.
Oh, baking cakes. I bet they're delicious.
No, they were terrible. Come on,
Oh,
the
were
light
they?
bulb it's a terrible oven, but that's okay. I mean, it was easy bake oven.
Oh, well, no.
Well, speaking of voice and dialogue, do you hear your characters? Do you hear David? Do you have an inner monologue? Is that how you kind of connect with your characters, or is there another way?
Yes, I think that there is an inner monologue, and it is so curious because as I was writing, there were days that I would just write, there was one day I wrote 5,200 words, and I don't know how I did it. Like, literally, my husband Peter said to me, "Did you even eat today?" And I said, "Well, I guess I ate breakfast." It was as if I was writing, but I wasn't, if you know what I mean. It just flowed, and the characters and what they would say just flowed through. And there was one character that I didn't really want to be such a strong influence, and this particular character just kept surfacing over and over and over again. And finally I decided, okay, you're in. You got a major part. I give up. And it was a really curious experience. It's almost like how psychics do automatic writing. Like, it was just, there were some aspects to my characters that it just felt natural, and it was like an inner voice saying, this is who I am, and this is how you should portray me. So thanks for asking that question, because yes, I experienced that, definitely.
Yeah, they take over.
They do. Like, I have an inspector in the story, and I didn't really want to have that large a police presence in the story, and yet he just kept surfacing and kept coming forward. And so finally, I just, I said, okay, Brian Grant, you're in. That's fine. So yeah, it's interesting. And he teams up with Emma and David, and I think it helps also because when Emma and David get to the point where they've collected enough evidence using psychic and the paranormal means, they do need to go that extra step and have law enforcement help, because it's one thing to just waggle your finger and say he did it, but then you need to have some kind of evidence. So you know what? I needed this particular police officer in the story, and he'll figure in the next story quite prominently as well. So it's a curious thing how that worked out, because that was never my intention.
Right. You know, so definitely, so things are happening around you, and you're kind of there, and you write it. So I haven't seen Peter online for a long time. Is he still alive? Like what?
Oh yeah, he still is.
Well, I just thought if you're hearing things about murders and stuff, and maybe you wake up and you have shovels, you have them tied up in the basement.
Actually, we're having the time of our lives, because I'm working on my second book, and he's almost completed his second book in the Outfox series. So we really enjoy that. It was raining quite a bit earlier this week, and it's just like, so pleasant. Like, I'm in my office, he's in his, and we just, you know, at lunchtime we say, how did it go? And we commiserate or talk about it a little bit, but then we go back to our own worlds of writing. But it's fun. It's a really fun way of having a couple that are authors. It's a lot of fun. It's quite stimulating. He's very alive, but he's really had his nose to the grindstone working on his second book.
Oh, I thought maybe you were trying out one of the new murder plots in your book, and maybe he's tied up somewhere.
Oh, no, I couldn't do that to him. He's the love of my life.
So when you write a book like this, are you writing it with some sort of a subtext, some sort of a meaning, or is it purely entertainment?
I believe that it's purely entertainment. That was the approach that I took. But after I've had beta readers and reviewers look at the book, they drew my attention to the fact that I had seamlessly made reincarnation and the concept of past lives so natural that they, even though they were skeptical about the concept, the way I had written it was very natural. So if anything, if it gets people thinking about our interconnectivity, which isn't just on this plane of existence but beyond, then I think that that's a rather helpful message to people, to realize that if reincarnation really does exist and you didn't get it right the first time with relationships or things or the way you handled things, wouldn't it be nice that you can take what you learned in this lifetime and then continue developing your soul in a future life? So I've had people come back to me and say things like that, and I think, wow, I had written it because it was a fun story to write and because reincarnation is a subject that really interests me. And I've always thought about this idea, what if someone was murdered, and what if they came back soon enough that the killer was still alive, and what would they do and how would they react? Would it be enough to just have closure that they knew what had happened and they had a reason for their nightmares? But for me, the idea that people actually take something from it and pursue that idea and think about it further, well, I find that kind of rewarding, and it's not something that I anticipated would happen when readers were reading my particular book. So that gives it an extra dimension that's fun for me.
Reincarnation. I don't want to do this again. I'm tired.
But if I write a second book, folks, maybe you'd like to again.
I don't know. I'm pretty tired.
Well, did you have to do a lot of research into reincarnation, past life regression, all of that stuff, the hypnosis process, to be able to create a book like this?
Yes and no. I grew up in a family that surrounded themselves with psychics. My mother was had a little bit of abilities, but mainly it's because around the dinner table, it was so often for my mom and dad to invite psychics and mediums and empaths, and it was normal to talk about reincarnation and other aspects of spiritualism. So that part came naturally to me. However, when it came to making sure that I followed the right steps in describing hypnotherapy, I wanted to make sure I got that right. So I did a lot of research and I did a lot of reading to make sure that I understood that. And also, I have a seance in the story, and I wanted to make sure that I created the right type of feel and environment for a seance beyond just what I remembered as a kid being witness to seances, but more, but I did study it some more just to make sure that I could explain why certain things were being done, and just to make it more, to give it a fuller feeling. So some aspects, yes, came naturally. Other aspects definitely needed research so that I understood more fully. And also understanding about a little bit, although I didn't want to make this a police procedure, and it's not, I wanted to make sure that when I was portraying the police officer that I mentioned earlier, that I got that information right for what it would be like in a small Ontario town. So I did my best to do research where I felt that my knowledge was not as much as it should be. And in other areas, well, it came naturally and flowed with the story.
You said you've already done a second one, so you're going to continue these.
I'm working on a second one. I definitely am. So the second one will still feature Emma and David, as well as Brian, the police officer. And they are, Brian is near retirement age, and Emma is in her mid-20s. David is around 30 years old now, and they are going to form an investigative team working with the new Elgin Police Department, which is a fictitious police department I created. But they're going to work on cold cases and use the paranormal to solve these cases, and work with Brian's connections to the police department, who will be a liaison. They will work together to try and get closure for people who have lost their loved ones. So that's sort of the premise of the second story. And I'm about a third of the way in and very excited about what's coming forth so far. Most of the plot is outlined. And I realized early on, they always talk about plotters versus pantsers. And I realized I'm a bit of a hybrid, but I definitely need sort of a guide on where I want to go with my story. And there's plenty of room within each chapter to do the pantsing that people are often referring to. So yeah, I have most of the plot outlined, and I'm very excited about what I have come up with so far.
The bad scenes, the rough, the violence, or anything, do you do much in that area when you write a book like this?
I'm glad you asked that question. I have a very good friend of mine who beta read the book for me. And she said, "Angela, this chapter, how could you write that?" I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "You're such a nice person. You couldn't possibly write something like this." And I thought, okay, good. It means that I got to this person enough, that it had unnerved her enough that so I think that made it legitimate enough that even that she was upset in the sense that it was realistic. So I think you have to put aside how I can't watch scary movies, for example, but I can write scary books, right? So who knows why that's like that. But it was a good conversation I had with her, and I said, but that's what this character needs. I can't sugarcoat to the reader that he's not a bad person, and this is how I'm showing this particular person, who's the one who incidentally had killed David 30 years odd before. So the thing is, for me, it was very important to be as authentic and descriptive as possible. And so that's what that character needed. That's what that scene needed. And so I wrote it.
And so that bad character, the one that murdered him and stuff, any issues getting into the mindset of a murderer?
Any issues? Now, how do I answer that? If I said none at all, then you'll know I'm a psychopath.
Well, you see, this is the trick question here. We know what's going on here.
You're smart. You guys are smart. So basically, I think that I had a bit of a disconnect. I remember as I wrote this particularly terrible scene, which was necessary, I do remember feeling upset at what I'd written, but I knew it was necessary. So am I in the mind of this monster? I don't think exactly, but I was in it enough that I actually felt a little afraid myself, like a little shaky after reading it. So I figured if I'm feeling that and I wrote it, then hopefully that feeling is going to get conveyed to the reader.
Wow. Is that around the same time that Peter went missing?
Yes, it is actually just about around the same time.
Yeah.
No,
Curious.
he's such
Yeah.
a darling.
Yeah. Well, you have to be sure. So, so your accessory characters and stuff, the small ones that fill in and do other things, and sometimes they become, important, sometimes they don't. But where do you pick those up? Where do you think you get them from? Are they from people you've seen in a coffee shop, or maybe at a shopping mall, or somewhere on the street or something?
I don't think that there's really any specific character that I saw somewhere, although sometimes I might see a characteristic that I find interesting. And you're right, some of them are minor characters and then are just begging to become a major character, like the police officer I mentioned. But I think just observing over the years people in general, and when I need a character with a lesser role, somehow they do come forward. And interestingly enough that you say this, I have a character named Megan in the first story, and she's basically a barista. Actually, she's not a she. She is. She decided that she is non-binary. She is actually now a they. And so I talk about that a little bit in my second story, and this person's name is Megan, and they have come forward as an important component to the second story. I just found them very fascinating. So Megan is a they, and I like this person. It's a very interesting person. So they are going to figure quite prominently in the second story. So it's interesting how you can have someone play a lesser role and suddenly they just step forward and say, I'm here.
I can't help but think something like this, with so many angles, so many characters, and being involved with all of the story, it must affect you in some way. So when you come out of it and you look back at it, how do you think you're different from when you first started writing this book till now?
I'm different in the sense that I feel empowered. I felt that when I wrote my poems, that gave me an avenue, as I mentioned earlier, to express how I feel or what I saw or some kind of emotional state that I might have noticed someone going through. And that was very satisfying for me. But I felt that was what I do. I write poetry. Writing this book was really empowering because I realized that I was tapping into something brand new for myself, whether it comes, our art comes from the etheric, wherever it comes from. I felt I was tapping into a wider channel. So instead of a narrower channel with the poetry, suddenly it was like a raging river. And for me, that was a really fantastic, that was a transformation for sure, in realizing the power that I have to write a story and enjoy the process and enjoy the fact that people are actually liking the book and enjoying it too. So yes, it was transformative in that way.
Do you feel writing poetry has helped your prose with your word choice, the voice, cadence, things of that nature?
Oh, I love this question because yes, I think so. It's something I've thought about before. Because you see, when you're writing poetry, you're just picking a few choice words, and so few words can say so much. So what I found with my book was that while I was writing I was efficient with my words to the point where I thought, you know something? You're too efficient. So you know how a lot of authors will write 100,000 word book and then have to cut it back like 20,000 words or 25,000 words. For me, it was the other way around. I had to actually add more in to make the story in a way that I felt was fuller and described more. So that's interesting. That it's fascinating, but I felt that because I was using words so economically, I felt that because of poetry, that I had to really work more on developing the prose. So yeah, that I did experience that definitely.
Do your characters stay with you even now or if you're taking a break and not writing or something like that, do they still seem to be around?
Yeah, they are. They are around still. And so I think they'll stay around for as long as there's a story to tell for them. And I hope that'll be 5 books, but we'll see how we do. But definitely they are around, and I'm thinking about them all the time. So this morning we went for a nice drive, and I just was sitting there and thinking about Em, and I was thinking about David, and had some ideas on a particular chapter, and it just came. And so when that happens, if you're going for a walk in the forest, which I do a lot, or if I'm working in the garden, if you get an idea, I have my phone close by and then I just dictate the ideas down right away because I don't want to lose them. But yes, I think they're a part of you. Until their story is finished, I think those characters remain a part of you for quite a while. It just depends on when they tell you maybe that, hey, we're done. You can go do something else now. I'm expecting that it might be something like that. But right now, they're very much a part of my life.
Right. So you walk in the forest. Is that where you're dumping the bodies?
Yes, absolutely. I have a particular spot. If you ever like to come visit,
No.
I can show you where it is.
No, that's all right.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, really, anytime you like.
No. I'll send David. He knows karate.
Oh, okay. You can come too,
Yeah.
David. We'll first show some of your martial arts moves, Peter.
Yeah. He can dance around and kick you and all that, and run. But no, that's all right. I've got enough to do. Remember, I said I was tired. Okay, so
Yes, you did. Yes, I
no
understand.
trips right now. So
The journey might be just too arduous.
yeah. So what's next for you? What's going on now?
With respect to writing, or?
Well, yeah, whatever you want to tell us.
Oh, okay. Well, as you know, I'm working on the second book. It's called Revenge is Not Enough. I'm very excited about this one. I'm about a third of the way into it. So I'm still working on I have the basic plot lined out, but it's coming along. I'm also very active with an organization called Procyon Wildlife, which is a wildlife rescue organization near where I live. And so I do give them quite a lot of my time. And it's wonderful because we rescue and rehabilitate wildlife that's been injured or orphaned. So it's very rewarding work. And I even have a little thing in my first book about them, just a little tidbit to maybe recruit volunteers in a subtle way, but part of the story. Yeah, life is full. It's summer, so there's lots of work in the garden as well. And lots of time when I'm in the garden to think about my writing. And sometimes, like, there is a poetry book that I want to finally put together. It's a culmination of the poems that I've been writing since about age 10 until about now. And so that is something that is a side project that I'm working on as well. So, yeah, lots of artistic endeavors along the way. I'm also a singer, and I just produced an album called In the Breeze. And it's Celtic-inspired music, and it's got 3 original pieces on there, which are based on my poetry. So that was a very fulfilling project that I was working on as well. So I'm always busy with one artistic endeavor or another.
Are you gonna go back to doing any poetry at all, like writing new stuff, or are you?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Because sometimes it just hits me, and there it is. And the strange thing for me, or maybe it's not so strange because I don't know how other poets might write, but for me, when I have something, it's almost complete. And then I get it down on paper as quickly as I can, or really on the computer. And as soon as it's down there, then I can start tweaking. I can look at it a day or two later and then just tweak it. But usually it's pretty complete with just a few modifications. And I think it's just because it just pours out somehow. And when it's there, I make sure I get it recorded right away so that it doesn't stay in my head. Because, if it stays in my head, I might lose it after a while. So the thing is, any kind of ideas, no matter what it is, whether it has to do with the book or with poetry or even a few lines from the song, I need to put it down right away. Otherwise I'll lose it.
Yeah.
Or it won't be quite the same as what you thought originally.
Right. Yeah. That's always, even if you have ideas or it's always good to try and record it somewhere or written down because, you think, oh yeah, that'll be great. And then you'll forget if you don't, or it goes away,
exactly.
I had a poem, I think it was Roses Are Red, Violets Are Blue.
Oh, that's so original.
Yeah. You see, and I didn't write it down, so I don't know how it ends.
Oh my God.
I just, so it's really disappointing.
Yeah.
It's
That's a shame.
It's
you robbed the public of something so beautiful there.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah. Unsolved mystery.
Yes.
Anyway. Well, listen, do you do social media? Do you have a website? Do you have what's your, contact for readers and fans?
I have a website and it's my name. It's angelavanbreemen.ca. I'll spell it. It's ANGELA, V like Victor, AN like Norman, B like Bob, REEM like Mary, E like Edward, N like Norman at .ca. AngelaVanBreemen.ca. And along the top of my website, you'll see all the different social media handles. So that's why I think it's easier to visit the website, because you'll see links for Instagram and Facebook and so on. And also there's a section there where you can order books. And the books are also available on Amazon. So that's probably one of the simplest way. But they're also available at most major bookstores, online bookstores, and a few physical bookstores.
Right. Do you have David and my books on there too, on your website?
on my
Yeah,
website, sure. Send me the links. I'll put them on for you.
Along with your poetry, Al.
Yeah, along with my poetry. Maybe someone can help me finish.
Sure.
I'm trying.
Wouldn't that be delightful?
Yeah, it would be nice, but it's not going to happen. So anyway.
Bobby Vinton might even write a song using that.
Yeah. Oh boy, you see, you're aging yourself.
Yeah,
really. Nobody knows who Bobby Vinton is. Come on.
Really? I think that you gentlemen do, and I do, so there you go.
There you go. The old. That's a past 10. Well, anyway, we're going to put all that up on our website as well. People can find you real easily that way. And along with your book, of course, Past Life's Revenge. And it's a David Harris and Emma Jackson mystery. Angela Van Breemen, thank you for being here.
It was a real delight and pleasure to speak with both of you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was really fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.